Hello everybody, and welcome to the express version of the lesson I just uploaded about 2 hours ago. Speaking of 2 hours, that lesson, the same lesson that I'm going to teach here right now, was about 2 hours long. There were a couple problems with the microphone, and beyond that, I just felt like there was a little bit of over explanation. It went on long. Many people don't like a longer video, but if there's anything in this video that I skip over, go by too fast, you can fall back on the longer version. I thought it would be great to upload a condensed, bare bones edition as fast as I can. So let's get to it right now. So the lesson is about what do I do when I encounter a major chord. I'm tasked to create something with it. Maybe I'm in a band setting and I need to solo over it, and I know it's either one of the three major chords of a major scale. And what to do when you hear these national numbers. Hey, that's the one chord. No, this major is the four chord, or this major is the five chord. Major chords in the major scale are either one, four, five. The minor chords, as we went over in the last lesson, are two, three, and four. And this is how I know that. Basically, and also this lesson is set up so that we're going from the ground up, from the most basic level of information right to the maximum level of information that gets me to the full diatonic understanding. But before that, we can even handle any of these chords, any of the major chords, the same way we can handle any of the minor chords with just a pentatonic understanding. You don't actually need to know if it's a one, four, or five. Pentatonic will work over all of them. However, you get the best effect by knowing the the final money notes of the one versus the four versus the five. And here's how you know that. Let's go. With as minimal explanation as I can, if any of this leaves you hanging, we're just gonna you'll have to go for the other lesson to get the deeper understanding. And one level, starting at the top here, I know my intervals. Okay, there they are. You'll memorize that. Next, know your scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Understand why many people use the key of C. Today we're not going to be in the key of C, but C is a great example because it doesn't use any sharps or flats, and it illuminates what you need to know. So the next is where the national numbers come from. Basically the notes are numbered from the beginning of the scale, from do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's that easy. And you'll also see that they actually correspond with one is the root, the two is on the whole two, not the flat two. Just calling it the whole two is kind of the three is with the three, the four with the four, and the five with the five. And then you can see here that today we're talking about major chords. I have a capital M for major, the small m for minor, and the you can see where they align with. If you want to know why they align, why are certain chords minor and certain chords major in a scale, why doesn't the major scale have all major chords and the minor scale have all minor chords? Because there is a way that there's a structure to chords, and here it is. Just look at this diagram, and you'll be able to understand that a minor chord triad with three notes, it's the middle notes that make the difference. The outer two are like a shell, and the middle two, one is a flat third, which makes the minor sound, and the major third makes the major sound, and it's all about the intervals in between them. So you can see that if you go and check out C, E, and G versus, say, D, F, and A, or F, A, C for major, you'll see this pattern of intervals versus starting from A, C, and going to E, you'll see this minor pattern of intervals is why the chords are made up the way they are. Okay, and why the pattern is major, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, major 5, minor 6, diminished 7. We don't have to worry about diminished in this lesson, and you can always think of 1, 4, 5 major, 2, 3, 6 minor. And if you're ever analyzing a song and you see two major chords a half step apart, or I'm sorry, a whole step apart, then you know you're probably dealing with the 4 and the 5. If you find two minor chords, a little less likely, that are a whole step apart, you know you're probably dealing with the 2 and the 3. Here we go. Down here we have the shape that we're using today, and we'll show you that on the next slide, but it's the cowboy chord shape with all the intervals illuminated, green for root, as it is here, red for 5, blue for the 1/3 that's found in there. And the reason we're using, there's two reasons we're using this. It gives us our nice chord tones on every string of the guitar, and it's the easiest of the 6-string roots to play. There's another 6-string root chord. It's called the G-shaped chord. This is the E-shaped chord, and the E shape is easier to play. These names come from the open chord shapes: E, G, C. Sometimes to a beginner it's not understood because you have to bar the strings for the open strings that you don't realize are ringing out at first. So this is the reason we use this this chord shape. So get used to that, and let's move on. The other reason is that it's easy to find if somebody just calls out a note name, like hey, we need an F sharp major chord here. Well, you know where F sharp is on the 6th string. We need a C sharp. We need an E, A flat, A sharp, B flat, right? D flat, C sharp. I have a terribly loose cable here. Got to get fixed. Okay. Now which pen we want to, from there, our next move is to understand that this chord exists within a pentatonic scale. And that is our first understanding that's going to give us an instant playing field to, because that's what we want next. We want, once we got where our chord is, we want to know where is our playground for notes. And here it is. Now, normally, what I'm trying to elucidate here is that we would normally use this scale shape because it's what we use for the minor scale shape, right? And it works good. And it contains that the major on the other side. So it's minor on one side, major on the other side. So it's good for a quick application of, because this is the shape everybody knows. So whether it's major or minor, put the root, set it up appropriately. So I would set this green note on B if it was B major. I would set it up on E if it was E major. I would set this small m up on E if it was E minor. Okay? But instead, we're going to use this shape here because this one is what's surrounding that chord shape that we chose, right? And the that chord shape has a nice pentatonic underneath it. So right off the bat, we have a playground, a small playground of notes that we're growing. And the final lesson here is that we are conjoining this pentatonic shape that we are using is actually, it's the next shape over from this, from the first playground, the shape that we all know and love. When I was new, it was hard for me to think about these shapes because I always thought of them as a new shape, not realizing that my fingers were on notes that I was just playing in the old shape, that there's a connection here. And this connection, this overlap of shapes, is very helpful for almost every teaching of every geometric thing, every shape you'll learn, every scale, pattern. It's very helpful to think like this, that you're already in the next place you need to be. You get like an anchor point, which helps you move to go, oh yeah. As a matter of fact, when I was a new player, I hated this shape because it was kind of awkward. It didn't really have that nice, easy pattern to learn, like this one. so I shied away from it without realizing what I was missing. So now we have a shape underneath our chord here, or our chord should be here in B today. As well as also in the middle here, you'll see a repeat of the root note down here on the D string. You get root, you get a third, you get a fifth right there, and that's usually how I'll just play this bar chord now. Sorry about this clicking cable here. I am actually going to try something quick here. Taking time up on our turbo lesson here. Moving on to the next slide. We just can't spend any more time here. So you want to expand your pentatonics as the next step. So here you go. Understand all 5 of your pentatonic shapes. We're calling this shape the 1. Consider this shape the 2. So if we were here, we're here, 2 to 3, 4, 5. The shape we all know and love that we started with. Moving on, now you want to take this playground. Now you have a playground all up and down your fretboard based on your original chord. Cool. But what you'll get if you stop here is noodling. And how do we conceptualize the fretboard to not noodle? How does it work? What is this? Does my playing sound like noodling and a professional sound like there's these great lines and there's these cool haunting notes in between? How do they do that? Here's how. We go for the 2 basic triads are the answer there. And what you want to kind of elucidate, or get yourself like a roadmap in your mind like this, where you can see the basic triads on this string. To me, just knowing this set of triads helps me know the triads on the top 3 strings, G, B, and E as well. So for example, here 5, 3, 1 could also be 3, 5, 1. Could also be this. The D shape chord, which is actually and so on and so forth, to know where these fit inside your pentatonics. And so what you see here says full pentatonic with caged. It's what we're looking at here. So we have 3 understandings right here in front of us. Our simple triad shapes, where they fit into pentatonics. The unnamed darker squares are the full caged sequence here. You have, like, starting where the plus sign is, we have the G shape. Then we have the E shape chord that we're dealing with. From there we have the D shape, the C shape, the A shape, and back to the G shape. You want to have that under your playing, and here it's highlighted for you by, I could put some brackets around these shapes. So we've got the G here, the E shape here, the D shape here, the C shape to start with, caged, C, A, G, E, D. Now, to me, I tend to focus on the E shape, the C shape, and the G shape, because when you play the C shape, you're playing the D shape. When you play the E shape, you're playing the, well, pretty much the E just kind of covers the E. And the G shape, you're playing the majority of the A shape. You're just missing that root note down that you can grab when you're thinking about the C shape in this pentatonic shape or in this pentatonic shape. So it's pretty much all you really need is E, C, and G, or keg, I guess. Not bad, right? Okay, so that being said, I have a little reminder up here called the advantages of harmony and triads. Well, once you start harmonizing well, meaning tertiary harmony or these triads, sorry folks. I wasn't using my rule of thumb there to find if you ever lost on your fretboard and kind of like, hey, where is that next triad? Remember, it's the, all you need is the octave. The lowest note of the shape that you're playing is the highest note of the next shape. So if you can move your eyes skip 2 frets and go to the bottom note, now you know where you're going to plant your finger for the next note. Now I can see it's this one, and I can see it's this one. Okay, so that being said, what the advantage comes is now those can sound kind of like, cool, but it's a little plain. But what the advantage you get is I'm going to play some wrong triads here. There's junk in there, but sounds kind of cool. Sliding up into, you're traveling to your home base, so you can put something, once you're playing things that are so harmonically right, then you can add in things that are harmonically wrong that lead to these harmonically right places, and you've got definitely something that's operating more musically, sounding more musical. So let's move on to our next one. Is a basic. You want to also understand where your roots are, because you're going to want to end your phrases primarily on the root, and that leads us to our next and very important, probably the most important one of all, understanding here today is the shapes with a full caged understanding. This is kind of similar to the next one, but we got that, what do you call it, that sympathesia trying to go on here, where you, I don't know if that's the right word, but where you visualize color tones for your chord tones. Now, I don't do that myself. I just know shapes and geometry. But if you do, awesome, that'll be a tool that helps you. But to me, this can help with these logical lines. But before we talk about logical lines, let me talk about the all chord tones here. Basically, if you notice this 1, 3, 5, these chord tones are found within the pentatonic. That means that 3 chord tones out of the 5 notes, or let's say this another way, the 5 notes of the pentatonic contain 3 chord tones at all times. So beyond these 3 chord tones, there's only 2 other notes. What are those 2 other notes? When you're dealing with major, it's the 2 and the 6. And the leftover notes, and these will be the money notes, and these will be the half steps, but we're going to talk about those upcoming, so stay tuned for that. And I mean, in this lesson, in just a few seconds, the 4 and the 7 are the half steps that you'll get when you go diatonic. For now, we've got the 2 and the 6. An interesting thing to know is that in the minor, you have the pentatonic. In the minor pentatonic, dealing with minor chords, you have the same shapes that have the 4 and the 7, and the 2 and the 6 are what you get when you go diatonic in minor. Just a interesting bit of geometry there, that how it reverses like that. But anyways, we have another way to think about this that's important is you have 3 kind of home bases and 2 generally step away notes. Now, this is always general. There are no hard and fast, do this, do that rules in music. However, you will generally find if you start training your ear for this logical line thing I'm going to talk about, you'll hear for yourself, like, okay, this is how you artists are creating lines that have like a logical flow, that have a logical ending point, and why landing on certain, when I'm not paying attention and I just land on a note in the pentatonic scale, why sometimes it sounds like noodling because you're not thinking about where you're ending your phrases in. Ending phrases on these away steps is the most tense. If that's not where you wanted tension, then it's noodling. If you specifically wanted tension there, then it is okay to sometimes perhaps end here or do certain turnaround lines in on certain notes. It's all doable, but you want to have a method to the madness, and you want to have a maybe a visual roadmap as well to what you're doing, and this is it. So let's talk about, before we get back into logical lines, this probably will be the longest slide of all of them, by the way. Trying to whip through this is in a half hour. The great shape for soloing is down here. It's this C shape, I think. Even though we're dealing with the shape for our chord here, which is great too, but I think this shape right here, for those reasons, is the best shape to play, because right on the top strings you get the maximum impact out of your top strings, which are always great for soloing. You get the shape provides arpeggio at the top. They're all chord tones except for this one. So yeah, that was an away note there. I'm playing this gray note here, away. Now I'm going to play this away note. You can end there if you're in between lines, but if you're trying to like end a phrase, you want to go to you want to end there on this green note, the 1. You can end on a 5. I tend to end on a 5 in like the middle of a phrase. I turned around on the 5. I went, turn around means you're going to and coming back from. And there's a nice logical line. I started on the 5. I went away to the 6, up to the 2, still far away, a little leap there, but the leap sounds good because I'm in tension mode. Leaps are tense, steps are not as tense as leaps. A leap is greater than a step, and a whole step, meaning in the guitar, like this is a step. Now remember, hopefully this chord is still in your ear. So did you hear the little step in there? 6, 5, 1, and 6, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, 6, 2, 1. You can see there's a logic to your lines, a flow of sound if you consider the chord tones, going to gray notes, coming back to chord tones. And if you land a little early on a chord tone, you can just see I ended there. That's a tension note. That's a step away note. So I did end on a, but that's because I'm in between the line and I'm going to go end my next line. There's a logic coming because I'm going, and you got to make your face go when you, to be like Steve Terryberry there a little bit. Don't tell him about my lessons. I don't want to see me on his channel. All right. I'm sure he'd have a field day with my idiot ass that can't shred or do anything. Okay, back to the lesson. Sorry. I'm sorry for the swear word. So you get the idea here. We could be up in this shape here. You don't have to be in our best shape. Red, step away, red, 3, 3, 2, 3, and 1. See, when I went to that, I went to this away note here, and when I jumped down to the 3, I thought that didn't sound as logical as I liked. That sounded better with a step, just because that's how these away notes are powerful. They're really making musical suggestions, and you really got to listen to what you're doing, and of course pay attention to beats. I'm just making up a beat in my mind, and you may not have that beat in your mind, but anyways, what's also important about this tension and release, and almost as important as these note choices, is the rhythm of the music and catering to the rhythms and understanding your time signature and feeling the pulse of the music and putting these, once you start putting these tones in the pulse, you can realize that on off beats and before you get to a beat, behind the beat, or whatever you call it, is where you can spice in other notes. Perhaps starting with the diatonic notes that we're going to get to, or even the quote unquote wrong notes, right? So that being said, let's try that for real quick. There, I went. There, because there was a logical progression on the beat, and that wasn't so on the beat, but so that's explained kind of what you heard there. But you can see how you can spice in and where those Jerry Garcia notes, how they are, how he'll work those notes into his solo for his unique phrasing sounds. All right, we got to move on from there. I think this was probably the most impactful page of my presentation here. Because just this alone can get you through any major chord situation, because this will work over the 1, over the 2, and over the 3 in the exact same way, because we're not elucidating, we're skipping out any of the gut notes, the character notes that make up whether it's a 1, a 2, 1, a 4, or a 5. All right, so a run that can help get you through this, first of all, or the first understanding is that I just kind of picture it as a standard pattern. This is maybe the first level of thinking here. And now I know where I am in my, when I get to this point, I know where I am in my pentatonic shape. Can you see where I am on that diagram? We would be, I just made it up to right here, and then I could maybe play down to this note where the plus sign is. And play. Here I'm just using my ear. Five, gray note, root. Okay. So then I might understand, though, in that pattern, this will help me out. Now here I am on that gray note. What do I do? Ah, there was a nice logical end to the line. I'm away. I'm trying to elucidate there. You get the 5 in that pattern. These little away notes are, you can consider like these are, the chord tones are the if they're the resting tones, then these are the tones that sound like you're going somewhere and give that when they're used properly, when you're hearing a solo that a great player plays and you're like, wow, that really made me feel something like I was going somewhere. I believe that it's these step away notes that are what you're hearing, and that and also when you get a feeling like, wow, that sounded great, it's also when they've gone there and resolve the line properly, bring you back home, gives you that feeling like, wow, cool, that's this. I'm hearing somebody that knows what's going on, and it's a sound that registers with. That's what's registering with people. That gives them that feeling of, hey, this is a pretty good guitar player. So from here, you want to go diatonic now. You want to get into the money notes. Let's take a couple understandings first. We need to understand the big square part of the pentatonic scale. And if we jump ahead here to Ionian, I've broken apart a pentatonic box here. We're a little bit ahead of the game. I got to go back a little bit, but really quick, when you break apart a pentatonic scale, there's this part here, this big square, and this big square will contain this, what I'm going to call right now the yellow and purple note, because we all know that green, red, blue are the chord tones, the gray is the step away note, and now we have these tones that we talked about, the 4 and 7, that are our step away, I'm sorry, our half step notes. This is, remember, half steps are where you can really milk out some for some reason I'm playing on E flat right there, but E flat minor and F sharp major, but we are in B. Wrong. Like that. So these half steps are going to get you, the really nail this difference between the different chords. Now, how do we conceptualize this very quick and easy? So you understand that the pentatonic has this big square. Also understand that these squares follow this angular pattern that will also illuminate when we get to something wrong happened here. Let's get out of that. Let me just delete what I just did there. And I wanted to go here. Sorry, clicked the wrong thing. And there again, and here. Notice when we get to this, our navigation square, that it's the same thing. Everything runs at an angle on the fretboard. And this angle, there's 2 angles of boxes, and they straddle the one, it makes whole boxes that straddle the E and A, D and G, B and E, and then a broken row of boxes that flow in this. Well, let's go back to our big square here and see it's the same thing. We'll get to that other one a little later. But what I'm trying to elucidate here is that, boy, that's a word I keep using, elucidate. I don't even know if that's right, but I think it is. I don't know. This big box here is broken right here, and that's you always have to compensate for this whenever there's a group that exists between the B and G string. That's where that interval. It's not a perfect fifth interval between those strings, so you have like a fourth, fifth interval depending on whether you're thinking up or down. Then you have to deal with the broken box there that you'll see throughout my lessons. So anyways, you got the whole boxes here, just like the other one, where they have the straddle the E and A, D and G, B and E. And when you want to try to find a box, if you're trying to picture this on your fretboard, anytime you find one here, we're finding one this right here. put it properly on the B major down below, so then I know. Whoa, that just messed me up. So here I am at the very top of this row, and if I want to know where to go, I just have to go to the bottom. And I know that which pentatonic I'm in. When I'm in, I've got the big square on top, I'm here. When I've got this the big box in the middle, when I've got it on the top, for the high strings, I went to my shape 3. The bottom box, the middle box is in shape 4, and the top box in shape 5 that we all know and love. So I think you got that. We got to move on. In major, you have an arpeggio in there, so that's cool. You have the root at the top, 3 and the 5. So it leaves you one gray note right here. So you have this. If I was playing up at the top box here, that's why that sounds good on the B. 3, 5, 3, 5, 3. Step to 3. Step through. Step 5. Step 3. Root. Okay. So, and I know that because I know my triad shape is right there. Triad shape of chord tones. I'm in the 3 now, where the plus sign is, in the square. Okay, so we need to know about that square for the next slide here. Let's move into that without any further ado. But to just ramble on a little bit more, the chords, the pentatonic shape that our original chord is from, has a box right here on the A and D strings, and it's the same thing. Root, 5. I'm sorry, my bad. 3rd, 5th, root. Step away now. Okay, moving on. So our next understanding, very important to get to our 7 here, and I'm going to disappear from the screen I didn't do this in my last lesson, and I wanted to correct that, so I got to go here, and I'm going to do video capture device off. Awesome, here we are. Sure you can still hear me. I've just disappeared like a good ghost. State Farm is there. All right, so time to add the missing money notes, the 4 and the 7 that we talked about before. These are, in one hand, they're gut notes. Why are they gut notes? Because we place them in between, in the 4 empty spaces of notes in between that big square. All we have to do are plug in our tones here, and if we do this, we can, the fretboard is completed. There are no other notes to add. There's no other notes to think about it. It may sound crazy at first, but when you add these 2 notes in this shape, this is why I teach these lessons, because this is awesome that you've completed you've got the major scale all over the fretboard just by knowing this concept. So like, let's say we're playing in my bar chord shape and the B, and I know I've got that square here under 5 where it says darker. If I'm playing Mixolydian, I'm going to know it's a little bit darker and heavier. So, and I also am going to know, like, where I'm going to place those notes. So I'm going to put them on my square would have this. And my next square would be going to, that one, there's one character note that's going to give you that Mixolydian sound, and we'll go over that in a second. But the first thing, we know that you have to know that there's two natural scales, and they correspond. You've seen me describe this with minor, and that's because they correspond, and you'll even see that the shapes, that the gut notes that you install are the same, because there's a relationship between the 1 and the 6 minor, the 4 and the 2 minor, Dorian, Lydian and Dorian, Ionian major, Aeolian minor, and Mixolydian major, and Phrygian minor, Mixolydian major. So the darker scales and the lighter scales, and that kind of tells you that everything is a mode, really. A major scale is a mode. There's that can be dissected and argumented, but it's way easy to think for your guitar soloing purposes. Major's a mode, minor's a mode. They're all modes, and they all have names. But we're not really, there's a relationship, but we're not necessarily talking about modes, but this will get you in the door. But don't worry if you're hearing modal names and thinking, well, wait, modes. Don't worry about that. Just understand how to plug the 1, 4, and 5 in. But they do correspond with the corresponding modes. So anyways, neutral is Ionian, right? So that creates, now what we have here, these are the notes you install, these two gray notes, just as the pattern. But what are those gray notes? Well, they're the natural 4 and the 7 in the scale. So this is in basically from the chord, considering that that is the 1, but also from the scale. 1, 2 would be here next door, and one thing is I don't have my cursor. There we go. Sorry for lack of cursor here. We were talking about, I'm sure you got everything that I said without the cursor. Anyways, here I am in the 1. I'm going to play this 2 over here where the plus sign is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And by the way, the 2 is also off to the side here and off to the side there, just in case you were wondering, and all sad about the 2 being left out. Well, that's where it is, and it's also on the top here, and it's somewhere on the bottom here, but we're not going to worry about that. Anyways, I believe it's underneath the 6. Was that where the 2 would be? Yeah. Anyways, okay. So the 2 surrounds this shape, not to worry about it. So this 4 and the 7, because they're the natural notes of the scale, create this harmonic balance. And you've heard about character notes here. See, underneath I've also called the 4 and 7 character notes. You also want to understand these as the character notes. These are the notes that are going to give this modal flavor and create this. Why is the same major chord considered a 4 and considered a 5 or a 1? It's these character notes. The neutral scales, Ionian and Aeolian, have just basically consider this shape the standard. Standard 4, standard 7. If you raise up the 4th, you can't raise the 7, it'll turn into a 1, but you can raise up the 4th, and when you do so, you uplift the sound of the scale, and that creates this lighter Lydian. And when you hear someone say, oh, Lydian's got the sharp 4th, now you know exactly what they're talking about. So for example, if I have my chord and I want to make this Lydian, see how that sounds better than? That's kind of normal. And that's got that uplifted sound. And you can hear when you bend it, that half step, it cries. Fooling around a little bit there with some off-color tones, but anyways. You can hear that kind of, that's if you're not hearing Joe Satriani, you haven't listened to him long enough. That's very common for, for how is he making music that catches your ear? Well, try a different mode than standard old happy birthday Ionian. And, Mixolydion's already been retreaded to death by jam bands, Zeppelin and Grateful Dead. So try Lydian. Anyways, if we want to go darker, we can flatten the 7, give the 7 a little flat tire there. And that's why I've got a little black mark to elucidate that these notes, there's that word again, that these notes are the character notes that are, and it's just one note. That's the craziest thing to know about this, that this just one note is what's doing all this and creating this, hey, this is the 1 chord, this is the 5 chord, or the 4 chord. Interesting that it's called a 4 chord. You can think, oh, the 4 chord, it's got the sharp 4. 5 chord, not so much. It's a flat 7, but that's how that rolls. So without over explaining it, we've got the got a little bit more of a more serious sound to it than our standard major. And you do that by entering these gut notes. Sometimes these intervals can get confusing to people because you're thinking about this from, you might understand that the 5 chord, you're saying, well, this is the 5th of the scale right here. So isn't this 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It is, if you consider it that way. Fair to do, but then you're thinking about, well, that's a 1 and a 4, and it's not really it's kind of distorting what's going on. In regular major, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. It only works for natural major, it's correct. But then if you're thinking about the standard interval names starting from the 4 of the 4 chord, if this is a 4 chord now, we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 1. Even though if this is our root, it's a sharpened 4, 1. So you want to just bring these to 1. And I even think that this should be saying either root or, you know what we're going to do? We're going to change this to the 1 and change this one to the 1. Even though we're about to leave this, make that root, it's 1, just as a change up so you can see, root 1, same thing. All right, let's say, and not that I'm ever going to use these slides again once I complete these lessons, but let's move on because I'm trying to make this as short as possible, and I'm not doing a very good job of it. Ionian, then, therefore, Ionian, you're using this square. Ionian is the 1 of the scale, the 1 major, and we would place these notes, the gut notes, like this, and you can see here we've got the entire major scale here, every note of the major scale, and all I've done is plugged in these 2 notes inside these boxes, like I said before. So, oh, there's that sharp 4 in Batman. 4 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord, and you can know the 4 chord with this little L shape of chords using the 5th string, but and the same as the that L shape will work for the minor chords. All right, so moving on from there, we got to go. Hopefully you get that. If you're seeing some of these other shapes, that's because they still exist within this, like there's, if you put a box around there, that's your Mixolydian shape, but that will be where you're playing Mixolydian if you're up on the, if your root chord was where this plus sign is, then you can see here that would be your square, and you see the pentatonic shape works right there. These pentatonics, in case you didn't know, work in three different places. You can, if you examined any scale pattern, major scale pattern, major minor scale pattern on the fretboard, you would be able to pull out the overlapping two that overlap. One doesn't overlap, but there's three pentatonic. Every pentatonic shape exists in three different places. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's what makes this work over each of these chords. Lydian, same exact, you can see this is the same exact basic scale, but the gut notes have changed. And you can see that right in our boxes here. So for Lydian, I would just think about playing right through here. I played up through there. I went down, because as is above, so is below, and played up through there. And then I can noodle around in my pentatonic shape. I can end on my chord tone knowledge there, and all is well. So Mixolydian is exactly what we discussed. As you can see here, now we have the gut notes on the other side, on the darker side, and we can see it elucidated up here. Highlighted, illuminated, whatever you want to call it. And so for sheet 7, in case you were thinking, well, hey, wait a minute, doesn't these, isn't there, if you're playing B, wouldn't there be a 4 on E and a 5 on, yeah, now we're playing the 1, 4, 5 from the same scale. So before we're, trying to show you how you can think about these different, make any chord a 1, a 4, or a 5, but within one scale, there's a 1, a 4, and a 5, or a 1, a 4, and a 5. But up around the 4, you can see once you put it there, you can picture your square from your pentatonic, and you can see it's the Lydian shape. If we're on the red chord, you can see that the purple notes there make up the Mixolydian shape out of that box, and it rolls accordingly down the fretboard. I think there's a no, that's right. Okay, so moving on from there, we will go to sheet 8, and when I just want to get around the fretboard and move to a different place, and if I was ever having trouble thinking about that through all these other concepts, I might just flip back to a more basic understanding of the fretboard, which is here. All you need, what you kind of want to do is take all these layers and be able to overlap all these layers. So you can kind of, if I need to navigate quickly and I know where my square is, let's go back here and see that no matter what, where were we? Here. You can see there's a square of notes here. The same exact square of notes is here. And this is halfway. This is above this will be the square. The square will be below this. It always exists in your scale. You just have to know where it is. Whoops. And so that being said, if I know, basically, put it this way, if I know where my Dorian shape pentatonic is, and that's going to be where this bracket is right here. That puts the square at the top. This square straddles my, what I call the Phrygian shape. You might know these scale names, which would be, or that's a key of C. In this regard, once I know where that square is, I can get around anywhere. With this square, I know I'm in my Dorian and Phrygian shape. With this square, I'm getting out of my Dorian shape and I'm touching the square that's in my Aeolian shape. So and I just went up the Aeolian shape knowing I was there. This is a part of a broken box when I get here. This is that split box when I'm down, coming down the Aeolian pentatonic, or not pentatonic, but diatonic. I'm in the broken box, so that means that I could go here, and I'm in Phrygian. So that's what I'll leave you with today. Hopefully this lesson comes out a little bit shorter than the last one, and but probably not by much to make it worth it, but I think a little bit tighter than my last one, and hopefully my microphone didn't drop out as much. And I wish you guys well. Have a great day. I'll get on the camera to wave you all goodbye, tell you to like and subscribe, and you can leave a comment about if you like this lesson that was a little bit faster and had less explanations, a little better in case you watch both. I don't think you have time to do all that, but thank you very much. Have a great day. You guys are awesome. Keep jamming, and we'll see you soon.